Named after the indigenous raptors of Alcor 4, the PT-4 Sorrowhawk represents not only the latest Starfleet engineering has to offer in small patrol craft, but also an evolutionary step forward in the science of warp field dynamics. Prior to the Sorrowhawk, small patrol craft had to attack their targets at sublight speeds because attacking at warp speed was untenable. At warp speeds, the attacking craft projects ahead of itself a subspace wake that can be detected by its target long before the attacking craft can reach weapons range. Furthermore, since warp travel is only possible in straight lines, both predicting the attacking craft's course and obliterating it from the stars is an easy task for the would-be target vessel.
Your warp system seems so rudimentary.
Warp's fine if you like going fast in a straight line.
The PT-4 changes all this through the use of its quad-axial warp drive, a combination of two drive systems installed in tandem. The first of these two systems is a coaxial warp drive for making near-instantaneous jumps of extreme distance from carrier to target and back. The second system, and subject of this presentation, is the Alpha Quadrant's first maneuverable superluminal drive system, the quad warp drive. In order to understand the workings of the quad warp drive, let us examine the reasons why legacy warp systems travel in straight lines. When at warp, the starship's nacelles create a warp field that compresses space-time ahead of the ship, while expanding space-time behind the ship. At the center of this warp field, the nacelles maintain a warp bubble of normal space-time in which the starship remains still, immune from the effects of acceleration and the mass-time dilation that would accompany non-warp superluminal travel. If the starship's crew desires to change direction at warp, the computers managing the warp field can be instructed to compress space-time to a greater degree in the direction of the desired turn, while expanding space-time to a greater degree along the portion of the warp field that is outside the turn. However, a change in the geometry of the warp field would be accompanied by a change in the geometry of the warp bubble. Space-time within the bubble would be contracted on one side and expanded on the other, causing tremendous stress upon, and almost always, the catastrophic failure of the starship's space frame. Enter the quad warp drive, whose warp field management computers are able to manage not one, but two warp fields simultaneously, one embedded within the other. During standard straight-line warp travel, the quad warp drive's additional pair of nacelles do nothing. However, when switched into maneuverability mode, the second pair of nacelles come online, creating a small secondary warp field at the center of the primary warp field. With this change, the Sorrowhawk finds itself sitting in the warp bubble of the secondary warp field, and the secondary warp field is in turn sitting within the warp bubble of the primary warp field. When turning, the primary warp field takes on a symmetrical geometry as previously described, and the primary warp bubble becomes equally asymmetric. However, as the geometry of the primary warp field and bubble change, the secondary warp field changes its geometry in a manner counter to that of the primary warp field, having the cumulative or net effect of keeping the secondary warp bubble in a symmetrical geometry and causing neither stress on nor the catastrophic failure of the Sorrowhawk space frame. Of course, a maneuverable warp drive would be of little use without the ability to deliver a consequential blow to one's target, and for that the PT-4 is aptly equipped. Her arsenal includes 6 2.8 megawatt Type 5 phaser cannons, 3 under each winglet, and dual full-size photon torpedo tubes. Each of the Sorrowhawk's tubes is capable of launching a 3-torpedo spread from its 15-torpedo magazine. Torpedoes are charged with antimatter as they are loaded into the tubes, and each torpedo, once armed, must be either used or discarded by ejection, as the Sorrowhawk has no mechanism for disarming its torpedoes. The Sorrowhawk is capable of cruising at warp 7 for up to 152 hours, or super cruising at a speed of warp 9.4 for 38 hours. Additional features of the Sorrowhawk include a length of 20.4 meters, height of 3.76 meters, and a width of 14.7 meters. Instrumentation for dual pilots in an ejectable cockpit pod, winglet-mounted shield generators, aft sensor jamming domes, and foldable winglets for both the ease of storage and maintenance on carriers. Starfleet's new Ontario-class expedition carriers host 8 flights of Sorrowhawks in 2 squadrons for a total of 32 craft. If you enjoyed this video, and you think your fellow sci-fi fans on the internet might enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Live long and prosper.